see like mortgages going from 2 and a bit to 6.2, I think it was what it picked,
something like that.
Has a lot of repercussions across the board, right? From home builders to home purchasers. Indeed, there's going to be less inventory because there's going to be people that have locked in a 28-year mortgage that don't want to have to figure out and refinance that as they move to the new house, right? So again, we go back to this. What is more powerful right now? Is it the supply side or the demand side, right? Because again, what you just articulated is the supply side going down, and that's what we're seeing, right? Like we're seeing less people willing to go and buy. We're seeing the ability to get a mortgage more expensive. We're seeing home builders not having pre-approved people at 2.5. And then when they're finally building it out and ready to go, they're coming in and saying, I can't, actually, the bank won't approve me at 6 points, right? So I'm not going to be able to do that. So home builders are building less because they see the risk of not being able to fulfill future home sales, right? So I'm kind of seeing a lot of inventory issues and that is overwhelming the demand issues. Now, at some point that'll break, right? At some point, it's exactly what the Fed's trying to do across the board. They're trying to break the back of demand for everything, and that will include mortgages. And so I think there will be a point where there's going to be a bit more inventory and there's going to be less demand, but it's still, as you were saying, if you look at the year-over-year numbers, the month-over-month, yes, a lot of prices are down. Year-over-year numbers, we're still seeing double digits, right? So and then it'll be interesting to see when that quote unquote breaks. I think it's going to be a while. We got to get those inventories up, right?
Well, and
do we though? Like, isn't in my mind the housing market is no different than any other market. The marginal buyer or seller creates the last print of the price, and so I look at this and say, I don't really care. The inventory doesn't really matter to me. You can have lots of inventory. You can have no inventory. If the marginal seller can no longer buy, and if the marginal buyer can no longer buy, and the marginal seller is motivated, you have a market where you'll have significant price declines. And we haven't seen any improvement in affordability. The decline in housing prices have been offset by the increase in the costs of the interest costs of the mortgage payment. Further, you have the behavioral barrier of, wait a second, I was just doing this at X dollars in payment with interest, and now it's Y dollars, and it's just more, and I don't want to move now that it's more.
So I would say two things about that marginal buyer. That's different in home buying than it is in stock buying. What if I were to say that I'm going to buy back 50% of my stock in my company, and I'm a public company? What would happen to the price? Same demand, but now I'm going to buy back inventory. I'm going to reduce the inventory, the amount of shares that exist in the market. Prices are going to go up, right? Like this doesn't happen in stocks. Broadly speaking, you have a similar float. In housing, inventories matter, right? And housing inventories matter. It also, there's a second thing.
The marginal buyer also matters.
It does. I'm not saying one trumps the other. I'm saying one is trumping the other right now, and it's lack of inventory. If you look at the data, long-term data, like I see, Jeff, what you're putting up is more like shorter-term stuff. The last couple of months, right? You're seeing a bit of a weakness here, month over month, but year over year, it's still fairly tight. And because of that, this is going back to the CPI. 40 to 50% of the CPI comes from shelter, right? And so that's not going to seep into the market for a while either. And this is all due to this unhealthy market from the supply side.